Let's take you to Washington. We can join our North America correspondent, Ione Wells, who is there. So, Ione, JD Vance, the Vice President, on his way to Pakistan for these crucial talks, possibly the hardest part of the job so far for him since he became the Vice President. What is the narrative that we're now hearing from the White House and the expectations around these talks in Islamabad?
Well, the message that we heard from JD Vance just before he set off was essentially that if Iran is open, if they are negotiating in good faith, essentially, then he feels there could be progress made. But if, in his words, Iran tries to play us, then the negotiating team from the US's perspective won't be receptive. Now, that is obviously the US's narrative. I think both sides are at the moment far apart when it comes to two of the crucial issues that they said they had agreed on as part of this ceasefire. One is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has said that it's closed, that there is only certain vessels allowed through. The US has said that it was agreed that it would be fully open, and certainly Donald Trump has repeated this line again in further Truth Social posts, that it is not the agreement we have, that it would be closed. But also fundamentally, they seem to both be far apart when it comes to what the agreement on the ceasefire actually was, with Israel increasing its bombardment on Lebanon, more than 300 people killed in Israeli strikes, and Iran saying that Lebanon was supposed to be part of that ceasefire agreement, the US and Israel saying it wasn't. So I think there are still huge gaps here when it comes to what is going to be discussed in these peace talks in Islamabad. I think as well, as you mentioned there, this is certainly a really difficult task for JD Vance, possibly the most difficult that he's faced so far as Vice President, because he is essentially being tasked with trying to negotiate a deal that will satisfy the US, Israel, but also Iran, sides that are currently, as I say, not in agreement at all, really. But also, I think JD Vance, as somebody who has historically been anti-US intervention, will be thinking about how is a deal going to land with the sort of MAGA anti-interventionist base that he himself has certainly campaigned on in the past.
Ione, thanks so much for that. Well, let's take you straight to Islamabad and join our Pakistan correspondent, Caroline Davies, who is there. This is where peace talks are due to begin on Saturday. So much expectation around them now, Carrie. Lots of preparations taking place in Islamabad, but have we got an official schedule yet? Do we know exactly what's going to happen?
Lucy, we don't have an official schedule yet at all. However, we are starting to see some changes in the city. I talked to you earlier about the fact that there was security around the red zone, the area in Islamabad, which is where the government buildings are, and the foreign embassies. We were down there earlier today, and then we have been pushed back from the area just on the outskirts of that red zone. We were told by the spokesperson for Islamabad police, who was there when they moved the journalists further out and further down that road, which is the main arterial road into the red zone. We were told by him that there were going to be delegations on the way soon. He didn't say how soon. He didn't say which delegations, which convoys were going to be coming in. But we were then moved further and further out. So that secure area is becoming wider and wider in anticipation of the arrival of these high-level guests. Now, of course, we know that JD Vance is on the way. What we still don't have confirmation on is the Iranian delegation's movements. We have had no confirmation that they have arrived in Islamabad. We have had no word about whether they have left Iran yet either. So at the moment, that is still uncertain. That is still something that has not been publicly made aware. But at the same time, speaking to Pakistani officials, they are all determined, saying that yes, these talks are going ahead, feeling very positive about those talks is the messaging that they are giving to us behind the scenes here in Pakistan. But still many waiting to hear about the Iranian delegation, not least as you were hearing from Joe Inwood's report earlier, talking about the questions that both sides have about accusing each other of violating the ceasefire. And in fact, we did hear yesterday from some Iranian officials who suggested that unless there was a ceasefire holding in Lebanon, that they might not attend the talks here in Pakistan. So still a lot of anticipation here in Pakistan, waiting to find out what is happening with the Iranian delegation.
Carrie, thank you so much. Well, let's look at Lebanon. A senior official in the president's office has confirmed to the BBC that Lebanon will take part in direct talks with Israel next week, but only if there is a ceasefire in place. Lebanon's health ministry is saying more than 300 people were killed in the Israeli strikes on Wednesday, and a third of those were women, children and the elderly. More than 1,000 others were wounded. Our Middle East correspondent Hugo Bachega is in Beirut.
I've spent the morning here in central Beirut, where rescue workers are still searching through the rubble for one or two people who are believed to be here. But 2 days after those horrific Israeli airstrikes, there is no hope to find anyone alive. And residents are returning here, and they're saying that they, can't believe, what they're seeing. And they said they thought they were safe here. For those familiar with Beirut, we're just a block away from the Corniche, which is one of Beirut's postcards. Now, the health ministry has confirmed that at least 300 people were killed, a third of them women, children and the elderly. So Israel said it was targeting Hezbollah, but many civilians were killed here. And the authorities are urging the relatives of those people who are still missing, who haven't been identified, to give DNA samples for this identification process. Now, the fighting continues. There have been more Israeli airstrikes across Lebanon and also Hezbollah attacks against Israel. And a senior Lebanese official says that there will be no talks with Israel if there is no ceasefire here first.
Hugo Bachega there in Beirut. We just have a line as well coming to us from the UN, from the United Nations Children's Fund, that in those strikes, that barrage of strikes in Lebanon on Wednesday, 33 children were killed. Well, let's take you to Jerusalem now. We can speak to Joel Gunter, who is there for us. Joel, good to see you. We now have a spokesperson for the Lebanese president's office saying these talks with Israel are not going to take place in Washington unless a ceasefire is already in place. Has there been any reaction to that in Israel?
Yeah, that's right. A senior official from the Lebanese side telling the BBC that the talks simply wouldn't take place without a ceasefire. On the Israeli side, the Prime Minister here and Israeli officials have made it abundantly clear that they have no plans to stop their strikes in Lebanon. And those strikes have continued today following the devastating wave you've been talking about a couple of days ago that killed more than 300 people. So there is clearly an impasse there. What the Prime Minister here, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Israeli officials are saying essentially is that we're open to talks, we're open to direct talks with Lebanese officials, but we'll continue to bomb Lebanon in the meantime as we see fit. And understandably, the Lebanese officials don't see that as a solid foundation for talks. There is also the issue of Hezbollah. This negotiations offer by Israel has been to the Lebanese government. Now, Hezbollah is the party that Israel is fighting with. It's not clear how much sway the Lebanese government can have at this point over that group, and Hezbollah officials have said that they flatly reject these talks and that they, like the Lebanese officials are saying, would require Israel to act first. They would require a cessation of hostilities before they agreed to these talks going forward. So at the moment, an impasse still.